Fifth Hour Radio Show.
Reggie, tell us about how you and your love affair with the saxophone came about.
Oh my gosh, it's so easy. My parents took me to a drive-in movie theater, Rob, and we were watching the Pink Panther with David Niven, and I asked my mom, I said, Mom, what was that instrument? What was that? She said, that's a sax. And I said, I think if I got one of those, I could play it. And my uncle was terminally ill in Aurora, Missouri, and he played the sax. And she said, we're going to go down and see your uncle, and we're going to definitely, we can break out the sax and do whatever you want. So my cousin broke out the sax, and I learned the Pink Panther while they were at the hospital. When they got home, I played the Pink Panther for them.
So you were a natural. You were a natural at it.
It was natural, yeah. I really wanted to play it. I really learned it, and I never had a lesson, Rob, in my entire life. I did not learn how to read music until I was 28 years old, and I just felt the importance of doing that. It's kind of like being a physician. You go to school to learn how to practice medicine. Well, I wanted to learn how to play sax, and I wanted to know what the notes were. In fact, I didn't even know what the notes were, Rob.
So when did you first? You had a band, right? You started at a young age.
I did. I was 15. We actually played for the opening of the Arch in St. Louis, Missouri, and that was my first gig. And then I went to the Cervantes Center, which is now the Show Me Center in St. Louis, and that's kind of where I got my start as a musician with a band, an actual band, and that's the way it all began.
Now, you had to put your saxophone playing on hold as you served our country in the Viet Nam War. What was your duties during that time period?
I was a corpsman with the 3rd Marine Division, and I was very fortunate, Rob. I didn't actually have to get on the land of Vietnam, but we were an airvac transport medical ship, and we would treat the injured as they would come aboard. And unfortunately, I think we probably saw the worst of it. I mean, most of the soldiers in Vietnam didn't actually even see all the wounds and damage and deconstruction that was happening through our men at war. They just had no idea what was available and what was happening. So I was seeing the worst of the worst.
Now, after serving a few years, you came home with an honorable discharge. Besides family and friends, was grabbing that sax and picking up right where you left off one of the top priorities on your list?
It was top priority. I went to school in Mount Vernon, Illinois to become a physician assistant after the military, and I practiced medicine as a physician assistant for a thoracic surgeon. The physician's name I worked for was Kelly Berkeley. And after he had passed away, I packed up pretty much everything I had and started playing in Las Vegas, and that's kind of where I really got my big jump.
So was that considered your first big gig after returning home from Vietnam?
Yeah, it was, because I played in the Landmark Hotel, and then I went to Caesar's Palace, and from there to the Flamingo, from the Flamingo to MGM, and it just kind of multiplied from there. Once I got known and things started happening, I started adding pieces to my band, where it became more of an orchestra and a band together, because I've always carried a 4-piece, a piano, lead guitar, drummer, and, of course, a bass player. So that's kind of my 5-piece. But then we started adding orchestration, which was just incredible.
So you consider that probably your first big break that got you noticed and thrust you into the music scene where other big names started noticing your playing?
Yes, that's true. And, I've met so many great sax players. I mean, Vegas is kind of the hub for musicians. It's just incredible. And, I had the opportunity in the late 90s to perform in Seattle, Washington. I had no idea that Kenny G was in the audience, and my wife actually was seated right next to him. And I do some things on my sax that most people don't do. I kind of can make it sound like a snare drum. Do you remember the song, I Want to Knock on Wood, where it goes pop, pop, pop?
Oh, yeah.
My drummer broke his stick, and I popped my saxophone in place of that, and I don't even know how that happened. It just happened. And so I began to perfect that, and so I was doing some of that at the Seattle program, and it was amazing, because he didn't actually breath it aloud. He kind of whispered. He said, "How do you do that?" And my wife looked up at him and said, she said, "I don't think he's going to tell you. That's my husband."
That's pretty cool to have Kenny G wanting to know how you did something on the saxophone.
Well, I had some notoriety because I was from Nashville and I was performing in Seattle. And I think that, if you're a sax player at all, you almost all the sax players that I know see other sax players because we pick up different licks, we pick up different vibes from different instrumentalists who are doing that, and it comes from the soul anyway. And there are some sax players that are more mechanical than others, and some that play more soulful. I mean, if you take Gerald Albright versus Kenny G, you're going to see a very soulful feeling from Gerald Albright, where if it comes from Kenny G, you're going to see a bit more mechanical type sax playing. But the great thing about it is, just because we play the same instrument, it's like if I ask you a question, who do you like the best, Celine Dion or Carrie Underwood? Mm-hmm. Well, you may have a choice. You may say, gosh, I like them both. They're both great, and they are, but they have different genres of music. Yeah. And it's like a sax. We have the same thing in the sax. Simply because we have an instrument that looks the same doesn't necessarily mean we play the same. I mean, if you look at Boots Randolph and Stan Getz and Gerald Albright and David Sanborn and Ken G, they all have different styles, and yet they all have a place in our history in music.
Now, how many albums have you done, Reggie?
I'm working on my 7th right now, and I've done a couple of Christian albums. I've done a Christmas album. I've done a live album in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm working on a couple more right now. So I've done a lot of recording, but I haven't always put them out in the way of a CD.
What was it like hearing yourself on your very first album? How proud were you?
Oh my gosh, I was driving down 57 in Southern Illinois, and I heard my first cut, and this is going to kind of shake you maybe a little bit. I had arranged a song for my mom. I said, Mom, what's your favorite song? She said, The Lord's Prayer. I said, ooh, I don't think I've ever done that before. So I made an arrangement of The Lord's Prayer, Rob, that went to the charts, and I actually won an award for that through the Gospel Music Association because of the way that it was dynamically produced, and it was just a really good cut. But I heard that for the first time driving from Mount Vernon to Carbondale, Illinois, and when I heard that, I almost jumped out of my skin. I couldn't believe it was me. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's me.
Yeah, a little unbelievable, a little surreal, I bet.
It is. You get really excited, I mean, music is exciting anyway. I think that it's one of the greatest things that we can offer, and it's our soul, it's totally what we do. So I had somebody send me a little thing on the internet that said singers and musicians are some of the most driven, courageous people on the face of the earth. They deal with more day-to-day rejection in 1 year than most people deal with in a lifetime. Every day they face the financial challenge of living a freelance lifestyle, the disrespect of people who think they should get real jobs, and their own fear that they'll never work again. Every day they have to ignore the possibility that the vision they have dedicated their lives to is a pipe dream. With every note, they stretch themselves emotionally, physically, risking criticism and judgment. With every passing year, many of them watch as the other people their age achieve the predictable milestones of normal life. The family, the house, the cars, the nest egg. Why? Because musicians and singers are willing to give their entire lives to one moment, to that melody, that lyric, that chord, or that interpretation that will stir the audience's soul. Singers and musicians are beings who have tasted life's nectar in that crystal moment when they poured out their creative spirit and touched another's heart. In that instant, they were as close to magic, God, and perfection as anyone could ever be. And in their own hearts, they know that to dedicate oneself to that moment is worth 1,000 lifetimes.
Yeah, it's got to be awesome to connect with an audience like that. Just maybe just hit one note that touches somebody.
It is. And you're in Carmi. You're in Carmi, Illinois. Am I correct?
No, I'm in Karnak, Illinois, as a matter of fact.
Oh, you're in Karnak, Illinois.
Yeah.
Oh, that's totally different.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I didn't realize that. I thought you might be in Carmi. Gosh, I practiced some medicine at the Carmi Hospital there as a physician assistant when I was there. We traveled kind of a route, McLeansboro, Fairfield, Carmi, Mount Vernon, and that's kind of what I did after I got out of the Navy as a United States Corpsman.
Mm-hmm. So you've played with some of the biggest acts in the music business. Can you share with us a story, maybe that you've stuck with you all these years involving you in one of these acts?
Oh gosh, I could probably give you 100 of them. But
Yeah, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Well, when I was 17, I wasn't old enough to enter any clubs, but I was headed towards Georgia. And I stopped in the B.B. King nightclub in Memphis, Tennessee, because that was kind of on my way down through there, and I had to wing my way through it. And I kind of wanted to stop, and I thought, I'll take my sax in the club, and maybe they won't card me, because I wasn't old enough to be really in any club like that at all. But I walked in, nobody said anything. They thought I was one of the musicians, so I just sat down with my sax. And one of the side guys came up to me and said, a little later on, maybe our last set, would you like to come up and play? And I said, sure, I'd love to. And so this probably changed my life immensely. But I got on stage, and they started playing a tune. And let me tell you, Rob, I played everything. I played things that weren't even created yet. And Dane Getz and Kenny G would have gone, holy cow, what's that boy about? So I was just doing some really great things. And the fellow that was playing the guitar that was seated looked up at me and just kind of in amazement said, wow, man, that was amazing. That was incredible. Can I ask you a question? I said, yes, sir. He said, do you think you could play just one real pretty note out of that? And I thought, one real pretty note. So I played one, and he played all around that pretty note that I was playing. And I thought, it's the melody that focuses. And so I've kind of concentrated the 50 years, the 5 decades that I've been performing, I've kind of concentrated on really presenting some real beautiful music, whether it's romantic or whether it's pop or jazz or smooth jazz. I've just always wanted to present the melody. And, when I got finished, he said, son, if you can't whistle it, don't play it. And I'm like, oh, my gosh. And that stuck with me all those years. And I probably changed it. Terry McMillan and Brett Mason, and I don't know if you've heard of these guys, but if you look on the back of any country CD, you'll see those two names that are very vivid in country music in Nashville. And, they play very pretty music. And, we're kind of a trichotomy, mind, heart, and soul. And when those all things connect, then that's what really makes our music vivid and live and colorful. And that's what I do.
Let's move forward real quick to WPSD-TV's Lions Club Telethon of Stars. What year did you first perform, and how were you first invited to be a part of that?
Wow. I had a fellow that came to a church that I was doing the Lord's Prayer at and some of the other tunes that I was doing. And his name was Charles. I can't remember his last name, Rob, but Charles Hamilton, that's his name. And he said, we have got a telethon of stars for the children that are disabled in Kentucky. And this reaches a 4-state area, and it's televised. Would you be my guest? And I said, sure. So he invited me to come when I performed. That was in 1982, Rob. And I have been doing the telethon pretty much ever since then. I'm headlining this year on WPSD's Telethon of Stars with your friend, Charlie Catterjock.
Yeah. I've met Charlie this year. We've become pretty good acquaintances.
Oh, he's a great guy, let me tell you. He's very astute, very, very professional, very profound. He's quite an individual.
Now, is the telethon something you look forward to? And what I mean by that is this. Since it is broadcast on TV, do you put more effort into it, choosing the perfect songs as maybe you would opposed to maybe a smaller gig?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We are giving about 4 different time slots. And after we're given those 4 time slots, I sit down and actually individually choose every tune. And I use my original band that was with me in Las Vegas for almost 30 years. I mean, Keith Brown, my pianist and my coordinator for music, my band leader, he's been with me 32 years from Nashville. And he's worked with everybody. I mean, from Paisley to all these cats. He's just really great. My personal friend, my buddy, and we sit down and write the arrangements, and he actually finalizes all the arrangements. I tell him what I want and what I'm looking for, and then he finalizes it, and we take it to the board, and we put it on there and print it out, and this is what we do. So, yeah, I really labor over the tunes that I do. And I really try to do elegant tunes, but I also try to do a few peppy tunes, like, the one great song that's really popular in Paducah, Kentucky is Boots Randolph's Yakety Sax. Boots was born in Paducah, and he moved to Cadiz, Kentucky, with his family at a very young age. And then he went to Evansville, Indiana, and played the Blue Note Bar. And he just became a legend, really. I mean, he's a legend. He was very versatile. He could play jazz. He could play pop. He could play country. Probably one of the most versatile sax players that I know of today. Most guys Sanborn's called a fusion sax player, so he plays fusion and smooth jazz, and those guys can really bang that out. But Boots was a little bit different. He could play it all, and that's kind of when I got to know Boots, and I met him so many times and have been acquainted with him, and, I can't say we were at each other's homes because we weren't, but we were on a first-name basis. And because he saw me so much and I listened to him and I really tried to understand mechanically what he was doing and some of the things that he did. He's got one of the most sultry sounds in music history on the sax.
Well, the sax is like one of the most romantic, if not the most romantic instrument out there.
Yeah, it is, Rob. It's very romantic. And in fact, I put out a CD last year called My Passion, and it was divine. I was in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, in a condo down there overlooking the ocean. It was 4:00 in the morning, and I happened to pop on the stereo after I made a cappuccino. The sun hadn't started cresting yet over the ocean, and just as it began to crest, I punched the stereo on. And did you remember the movie that Christopher Reeves was in called One Day in Time?
Yeah, I do, actually.
Somewhere in Time? Yeah, Somewhere in Time. And that song came on, and I reproduced that on this latest CD. And let me tell you, it was as if the sun, when it just first started peeking over the ocean, said, "Can I light the world?" And I'm like, "Come on, bring it on."
Awesome.
That whole song, Rob, came to me, that whole arrangement. You can actually hear the lub-dub of a heartbeat in that tune.
The inspiration just hit you right there at that moment.
It hit me like a ton of bricks. Yeah, it was incredible. I was very impressed with that tune. It was John Barry that wrote that tune, and he wrote it for that particular movie, and it just became a real favorite. I mean, people today, when I perform, and I've kind of retired from being on the actual circuit of traveling, trying to put my saxes on airplanes when TSA saying, "Check it under the plane." And I'm saying, "You don't understand, this was not going to happen."
Yeah.
So you argue a little bit, and you kind of give a little, and they give a little, and I'm like, guys, these aren't student line saxophones.
Yeah, these are a little pricey.
1,000 feet at minus 30 degrees. It kind of messes with a sax.
Well, Reggie, how do you like performing in the Carson Center? I've only been once to a concert, and that was recent here with the Huey Lewis concert, and the acoustics there were phenomenal.
Oh, they are incredible. I performed with our 90-piece symphony orchestra. Keith Brown wrote the complete entire orchestration for the 90-piece orchestra to a tune that Thelonious Monk had produced many, many years ago. It's called Round Midnight. And it was one of the most, it actually has been recorded 150 times, and I'm the 151st artist that has recorded this tune. And we produced that, and we performed that at the Carson Center. I didn't even have a microphone, Rob, and I was concerned. I told Keith, I said, "Keith, they don't have a mic for me. How am I going to hear what I'm playing?" And the conductor, Raphael Ponte, came to me and said, "You are in the center spot of the Carson Center. You will hear actually every note that is being played, not just by you, but by our orchestra." When I got up there and started to play, I could hear the piano. I could hear all the violins, the viola, the bass violas. I could hear absolutely everything that was happening right there in that center spot. They put me there purposely for that. But I didn't know it at the time. I was definitely concerned, trust me.
Yeah, it's a great place. It's a very nice, elegant place.
And it was packed. They had 2,040 people, and they'd never had that many there before. So that was a really nice event. In fact, I'm working on right now a CD and a DVD with the Paducah Symphony Orchestra to kind of highlight Paducah. It's an avenue. We've lost some businesses in Paducah, like, coal's kind of down right now. We're USEC. I don't know if you're familiar with USEC.
Mm-hmm.
It's a refining uranium plant, and we've lost Goodyear Tire. We've lost a lot of different plants that have kind of come around, and so we're trying to attract businesses, and by doing that, we're putting the CD out so we can get it on. First of all, KET out of Carbondale, which you're familiar with, and PBS, the Public Broadcasting System, and make it more public, make Paducah more public. And by meeting with Steve Beshear, our governor, we're wanting to really increase the awareness, because from St. Louis to Nashville and everything in between, beyond that, from Chattanooga to Michigan, people have to come through I-24. Well, where do they stop? Paducah, Kentucky. Mm-hmm. And they stop here because we have a lot of great restaurants. We have, personal private restaurants as well as the chain restaurants, but we have a lot of good things to offer, so people stop here and eat. So we're thinking, let's attract some businesses back into Paducah. And if the Kentucky government will shave some taxes and show some real interest in that, and that's what I think they're going to end up doing. So I'm really working hard to do that. Paducah's a beautiful place.
Yeah. Now, a question I have for you out in left field a little bit, and I wanted to ask you this earlier. Do you have a name for your saxophone?
You know what? It's funny. I play all three of them. I play the tenor, the alto, and the soprano. And a few weeks ago, I said, some guys, I hadn't driven my automobile. Some guys picked me up, and they took me over there, and so that was real cool. And I performed, and they said, and I said, now let's not forget my girls. And they looked at me and said, your girls? I said, let's not forget my girls. And somebody said, man, those are your girls. I said, those are my baby girls.
Yeah. Well, you still haven't answered the question. You're dancing around it. Do you have names?
I don't actually have a name for them. I've never named them. I think sometimes BB probably calls us Guitar Lucille, but his wife's name is Lucille. So, I don't have a name for them. They're my girls, that's for sure. And, the great thing about it is they have more curves than most women have, but the bad thing about it is they have more buttons to push to make them work.
There you go. So what do you got going on right now? Do you have any regular places that you play in the Western Kentucky area?
Yeah, I do. A beautiful restaurant in downtown Paducah. It's called D Fratelli's, and I'm there actually every Saturday night. We have about 300 vineyards that are also in southern Illinois and Kentucky, and I also do the Purple Toad and the Orlandinis and the Blue Skies, and I perform in a lot of places like that. But most of the time, every Saturday night, you can catch me at D Fratelli's. I'm kind of contracted to Donnie James for that because it's just a great, elegant restaurant and great food. Oh my gosh, I just can't even believe it. It's amazing. They have their personal chef. It's wonderful.
Well, how about social media and websites? Where can people go to buy your albums, find out more information about you and your career?
Oh, it's easy. You're going to love this. It's www.reggielafaye.com, and that's Lafaye.
No one else has taken that web domain from you.
I had a guy in China that wrote me and said he wanted to use it, and I said, sorry, pal. It's trademarked.
This seat's taken.
Yeah, this seat is definitely taken. That's my personal name. I'm not going to give that up,
Yeah. So everybody, this November, be looking for Reggie on this year's WPSD-TV's Lions Club Telethon of Stars, and make sure you donate whatever you can to such a wonderful and worthy cause. Reggie, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been a blast talking to you.
Oh, Rob, you've been great. Thank you for calling. I hope to be up in your area one day soon. Maybe if you had something going on there, as a plug for Reggie, I'll be there when you call.
I'm going to have to come over there to D Fratelli's and check you out.
Yeah. Hey, I'll tell you what. If you do that, I'll buy your dinner, Rob.
Hey, well, it's a done deal then.
Radio. Okay, that's on the radio, buddy. Right there. You got it. It's in stone.
It sure is. I'll replay that for you.
You won't have to, sir. I got you covered.
All right. Reggie, you have a nice night, sir, and thank you very much.
And thank you for calling. Have a great evening, too, Rob.
Okay.
Take care.
25th Hour Radio Show.